Okay, we have now made it to what Epic is calling the lair of Scylla, and which I pointed out in the previous videos is actually part of a strait in which you have to go between Scylla and Charybdis on either side of these really high rocky crags, and they are meant to be really high cliff faces. So let's talk a little bit about Scylla. Scylla is an interesting character. She is in all pretty much ancient imagery of her and in descriptions of her. She is meant to be like woman on top and then 6 snarling dogs on her bottom half. There is some imagery I've seen where she also kind of has a tail behind that, and that's probably to help explain how she manages to swoop down from her high cave that she hangs out in these rocks to snatch sailors. Literally just like they're there and all of a sudden they're like whoop, and it's like absolute terror. Now, what's really interesting is at least in the description that Circe gives of Scylla, like she doesn't really describe her physically, but she is calling her a yelping horror, which is adding to the whole more canine aspect of her monstrous half, if you will. However, I do want to note that I have actually seen some more modern interpretations of Scylla as being more serpentine as opposed to canine, so basically being more snake-like. And while this does not come from any ancient depictions of Scylla, whether it be on vases and in art or sculpture, she is always shown to be top half woman, bottom half dogs, like that is her thing. I think part of that comes from, I believe there's some descriptions of Scylla, which in general are pretty vague. They don't usually give you a like full-blown, here's her breakdown in her details. It's sometimes described as being long-necked. So I think maybe that's where some people get the idea that maybe it's more serpentine. So fun fact, that's just something that I've noticed, but she is traditionally top half woman, bottom half 6 snarling dogs that, you know, come down and just go nom 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 nom.
If not friend, why friend shaped?
So the terrifying bit of the encounter with Scylla as it happens in the Odyssey, you know, he knows what's happening. Like he knows they've got Scylla on one side and Charybdis on the other, but he kind of doesn't tell the men any of this. And part of as he justifies it, he's like, why would I tell them about this horror? Like they'd have no time to try and process it because they've just come through the sirens and they've got the car crashing rocks and they're just like, oh my god, there's so much happening at once. So he's just like, I'm not even going to tell them. Which, look, we can talk about whether that was a good idea or not after the mutiny that's going to happen as a result afterwards. And this falls in line with Odysseus has a tendency to play things really close to the vest. He tends to not share information with his crew, which, yes, is his prerogative. He is the captain, he is their king, like all of that. But there are consequences for that behavior. But he also notes when they're going through the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis, like they're sailing through and they're, you know, trying to be really careful in how they sail. It's a difficult strait to go through regardless. And then all of a sudden, like before he even realizes what's happening, 6 of his men are just like, whoop. The men are then just like, what is happening? And they're just like, we gotta get out of here. And it's like, yeah, bro, you already needed to. Oh my god. It's like, again, a lot of this particular bit of the Odyssey, the sort of 3-part encounter, is very much shock, awe, horror, terror, like this is what's happening, because there's no stopping any of these creatures. And especially because, again, Scylla is pretty high up in its cliff, you're not going to be able to get her, and also, why would you bother? Just, like, continue on and get the hell out. And then, of course, Charybdis is on the other side, and Charybdis is basically a death sentence. You just, like, it's like, nope, we would rather potentially lose 6 than guarantee we're basically all going to die. So it's kind of a Spock, you know, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or the 6. And that is sort of what happens with Scylla. So I think it's interesting that we're calling this the lair of Scylla, like that's something you sail through when in the geography of, you know, the world. And again, these are often thought to be real places. And so like these monsters were created and kind of stood for other likely natural phenomenon that made those areas dangerous to sail through. Again, naval technology, everything was scary. So, again, yeah, interesting we're making it seem like it's a place that you sail through, almost like a cave. But then I guess that would kind of make it more like a tunnel, because if you go into a cave, you kind of assume you might not be able to find a way out, except for, like, the way you went in, which is like, why would you even go in there? So I guess it's supposed to be more like a tunnel. And while I said before, like, I understand, like, maybe we're not talking about Charybdis, because it's really hard to find things that rhyme with Charybdis, and it's kind of a mouthful, I think you can kind of say you have to go through the Strait of Scylla. And you can kind of not talk about Charybdis, and you can say it's so narrow that essentially there's no way for you to escape. So totally a way to do it, and as I say, always use the source material to your advantage, and, you know, continue on what's happening, because can you, like, it's a horror movie moment, basically, is what Scylla is. But let's go into her self-titled song that we've got here. Dark and creepy.
the lair of Scylla. This is our only way home. Deep down.
Oh, is that supposed to be Scylla?
You're quiet today.
Deep down.
Hmm.
Not much to say.
So having the voice and then having it a harmony. I guess this is what I'll postulate. Jorge decided to reimagine Scylla as a completely different kind of monster. So like maybe those are all the different heads. That's how she's singing. Because I'm just imagining 6 snarling dogs. Don't sound like that. And then also we've noted that characters who are non-human, who are usually like monsters, creatures, godlike, what have you, tend to have their own choirs. Maybe that's part of it. And I'm reading too much into that. Very possible. But I like how it is creepy. It's giving me very like kind of horror movie vibes. It does sound like though, because it's awfully calm right now. The waters are awfully calm. Like I don't hear any sort of sound design or the like, and Jorge is usually very good with his sound design, telling me that like this is a difficult bit of sailing. Because that's again part of the danger of Scylla, is that the strait is not easy to navigate already. Like the sailing is already hard, and then you throw in a monster just to make life terrifying. So I'm assuming again we're potentially doing this as some sort of, I'm going to call it a tunnel because it doesn't feel right to call it a cave. I'm like, it's some sort of tunnel. Like maybe we're in the dark. And that's what we're rolling with, just because of how calm the waters sound and how I don't have extra sound design that's, you know, going on here. It's different. Again, I just sort of wonder why. I always ask, like, if you're making a change like this, what's your reasoning for making the change? Especially when it's all right there in the source material and perfectly able to be used. Again, like if you want to cut out that Charybdis is on the other side, sure, just make it, it's a really narrow strait and you have to go through it and you can't really sail around it. And then all of a sudden, surprise, motherfucker, Scylla's here. Like, sorry, we're not even 30 seconds in. I'll let the song keep going. Ooh.
I got a secret I can no longer keep.
Oh, is this what Eurylochus was trying to talk about on Circe's island?
I opened the wind bag while you were asleep.
Oh!
Yeah, okay. Somebody had asked this in the Q&A, and I was like, why are we talking about Eurylochus and the windbag? Okay, let's take a moment and talk about this, because this is something very unique. This is not in the Odyssey. So in the Odyssey, when it comes to the windbag of Iolus and who does or doesn't open it, it's actually never specified. It's just said one man said to another. And it's just implied that a bunch of the crew, who are, you know, the absolute worst in the Odyssey, are just sort of chatting and coming up with this idea that what we're going to do is open it up and see what's inside because we think there's treasure. It's never specified who it is, and it's certainly never pointed out that it's Eurylochus. Now, Eurylochus is the absolute worst in the Odyssey, and he's a royal pain in the ass. And he is the leader of the mutiny that occurs later. So I wonder if Jorge is trying to lay a seed of Eurylochus is a problem, which is interesting because I'd argued he was giving Eurylochus a way more fair shake than Homer and Odysseus ever did. And yet it's interesting that we're having him say, I opened the windbag when you were asleep. And we've had him sort of try to tell Odysseus this before. I'm assuming this is what he wanted to talk about on Circe's island, when Odysseus then sort of cut him off and just said, no, we have shit to do. Like, we don't have time to talk right here. And then also you have these vocals, which I'm assuming are Scylla in the back, saying like, you hide a reason for shame, and also saying like, we are the same. Is she talking about Odysseus or is she talking about Eurylochus? I mean, you could argue she's talking about both. I think she's leaning more towards talking about Odysseus, part of that being, again, in the first book of the Odyssey, Zeus constantly talks about how, like, people tend to blame the gods for all of their problems when it's actually their choices that get them in trouble. So again, there's a lot of these moments where we try and either A, more humanize our monsters, and or try and put Odysseus on their level. And again, this is where I say I think the writing is a bit clunky, and that's just because the one moment where he was truly monstrous, given the time and place that this is set, the musical treats that as mercy. And yet in all of these other encounters, when he's being more monstrous, he's not really. He's just being perfectly in line with the ethics and the morals. Again, him killing the sirens is not seen as monsters, and it's also why I argue I think a lot of this is performative for the crew. I think he's trying to keep the crew on his side and hold everything together. I think also it's a cognitive dissonance that Odysseus doesn't realize that he hasn't changed, and if that's the case, okay. But if it's the case where the musical is trying to make me think he's more monstrous and he's changed, we need some writing tweaks because he hasn't ultimately. His actions are basically exactly the same as they were at the very start of the musical. But let's continue on with this. I'm assuming we're in the random tunnel of Scylla.
Leaving them feeling betrayed.
Oh, you're gonna, Odysseus.
Breaking the bonds that you've made.
I'm so sorry.
Interesting how it's Eurylochus and
We
Odysseus.
won't fade.
Forgive me.
We both know what it takes to survive.
Yeah, it's all about choices. You make the choice. Oh, that harmony's nice.
We only care for ourselves.
Is she calling out his
Light
ego?
up 6 torches. Deep down, we're lonely demons from hell.
Captain, something approaches.
I will say what's interesting about this compared to other encounters is that, I think of stuff where we didn't reveal that Polyphemus is the son of Poseidon. We hid that it's the Sirens until kind of the last second. Jorge tends to like to bury the lead, as it were. And it sort of seems like he's doing that here with Scylla, but like the mood is so obviously terrifying that it's like, bro, how does nobody else realize something's up? Especially when Odysseus has clearly not told them about this being where Scylla hangs out. And again, while in the Odyssey he doesn't tell them that this is where Scylla's hanging out, they're already in trouble. They're trying to navigate a really difficult stretch of water. So it's like nobody even has time to think about that, and that's why he justifies that he didn't tell them about it. This is one of those things where, again, we come to changes, and I kind of have to ask why. Like, why did we change it to be like this? Because as much as, yes, it's fun to bury the lead, there comes a point where you start doing it too much and you start relying on it in order to create drama. Like, the drama of this encounter in the original is already there. Like, yo, this is tough sailing. We already think we might die from that. And then, holy shit, there's a whirlpool over there. And then, oh my god, the 6 people are being taken by a monster. Like, it's high terror, high energy. And to try and do it like this so you can trick the audience or trick the crew, and it's become a plot device that Jorge has now relied on multiple times, and I hope it's not a crutch. If he's doing this essentially to create drama, I just have to ask, like, why are we bending over backwards to constantly bury the lead to create drama when you absolutely don't have to? It's all right there, and the trauma is high. Like, again, it's a terrifying encounter. So again, while this music is beautiful, these harmonies are lovely, I like what's being said, I think it's just, we've buried the lead one time too many. Like, it's, we're burying the lead again, but we just did that with the Sirens. So, like, again, as I can point to Polyphemus, it's like, we just did that with the Sirens. Jorge, you kind of can't keep using the same narrative trick over and over again, or it's no longer a narrative trick, and also, it causes fatigue. Like, it's story fatigue, basically. And it's like, bruh, just have it so they're sailing through rough waters, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, guys are gone, and you can still have them be shocked at, like, what the fuck, we didn't even know this was happening, why didn't you tell us?
I don't know.
We'll continue on and see what happens here.
Hello.
Seems we are probably going for a more serpentine view. I don't hear dogs barking, that's just why I go with it. And it sounds like another cave tunnel-like thing.
Run for your life! Run in your sorrow and fears. Choke on your blood and your tears. Bleed till you run out of years. We must do what it takes to survive. Give up your honor and faith. Live up your life and
Okay, so first things first.
I'm the realist.
Again, the music is gorgeous. I've pretty much always had to say that, like, the music is beautiful. And I love the high drama of it. I love Scylla's last bit where she's belting at the top of her lungs and she's got a growl. Like, she's pulling back in her throat. And it's like, God, that's hard. That is extremely hard to do without essentially blowing your throat. And I'm so impressed. A couple things. I did notice that, you know, we have the whole Eurylochus light up 6 torches. Are we meant to imply that Odysseus is like, holy shit, you're the one who opened the windbag? Fuck you. And the lighting up of the 6 torches, that does, again, imply to me that we are in some sort of cave or tunnel, really, type structure. At which point, you'd have to have them wondering, like, why the fuck weren't we lighting torches before?
Like, bro.
And a lot of this is, we're trying to, similarly to how Circe was rewritten to try and draw parallels between her and Odysseus, it seems we've rewritten the Scylla encounter to, again, draw parallels between Scylla and this new Odysseus, who really isn't all that new. Again, this sort of seems to require that the crew is a little stupid and that they're not sus about, like, something is weird here, like you're going through a dark, scary cave. And while I see the potential parallels to the Cyclops encounter, this all feels very manufactured. And I think that's where I'm having trouble with it, is we've manufactured it, we've buried the lead, we've put them in another cave, we've done all this, and like, and while I understand, I think, narratively, like, the imagery and, like, what Jorge seems to be trying to go for here, it feels so forced. It's just like he's really trying to bash you over the head with obvious in a way that, again, it feels manufactured. It just feels like, oh, okay. And while, again, I love that ending bit with Scylla, I think keeping it with the original would not only serve the same purpose, it would add more tension and drama because they're already battling difficult waters, but then the absolute horror of the fact that we're hearing Scylla sing, which I have to wonder, I'm like, do they not hear Scylla singing? Like, that's a question of, we're talking diegesis and non-diegesis, like, is her song meant to be heard? Or is it not? Because it seems like maybe it's not, which is a little weird, but if you have it where they are navigating a difficult strait, and she's also really high up on the cliffs, she could sing and they might not even realize it. They won't even hear it, because the whole point is that, like, she appears almost out of nowhere, scares the shit out of them, except, oh, whoops, 6 people are already gone, and they're watching them being taken up in her mouth. It's like, ugh, true horror movie, scary. And this just feels cliche almost. Like, we've leaned so hard into trying to draw a parallel, again, that it feels manufactured, it feels forced. Stuff with Eurylochus. I kind of don't know why we wanted to have him be the one who opened the windbag. I don't understand what that's supposed to bring to his characterization. Like, is this Jorge trying to lean more into the, oh, well, Eurylochus is a massive problem, as he is in the Odyssey? Well, you've given him such a fair shake up to this point that it's like, wait, but you haven't really set it up that he's a problem. You've actually presented him extremely fairly, and a lot of the stuff that he brings up is perfectly valid. The only mistake he had really made thus far as we knew, was having that conversation in Luck Runs Out with Odysseus in front of the crew where the crew could hear, where it's like, okay, this should be done in private, but everything he's bringing forth is frankly a valid point in many ways. And it seems that he's saying, I care about you, Odysseus, I'm worried. You're my brother-in-law. I don't want you to die. I don't want any more of us to die. So then why are we having it that he was the one who opened the windbag, when it wasn't set up that he was that type of character? And in addition, then adding it to Odysseus being like, well, light up 6 torches. It's like, are you implying that he basically wanted Eurylochus to be the one that died? But then also, if I'm in this cave, I'm going like, why have we not lit up torches already? Because apparently we're in like a dark, scary tunnel. Why have we not already lit torches? Because it has to be difficult to see, and you're navigating a boat. You don't want to smash it on any rocks, and if you're in an enclosed space, you don't know what the water is like. In this case, logistics matter. Like, man, if even I'm sitting there going, wait, logistics, then your logistics have me with big, question marks around my head. Really, it's kind of like the front half of this encounter and the actual setting of the encounter is what I'm just like, I don't think it works. It's one of those things where I don't see why we changed it. Like, what was the reasoning for changing it from what it is in the Odyssey? Sure, if you want to cut out Charybdis, because Charybdis is difficult to rhyme with, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to try and finagle the language that way, okay, fine. It's a narrow strait. Scylla is a monster that hides out in the cliffs and the rocks and swoops down and steals people. Like, yo, it's all right there. And this is another case where I say, use the source material to your advantage. Use it to help you tell the story you're trying to tell. This is, again, one of those cases where we've changed it for reasoning that, while I think I can see why, I think feels really forced and manufactured and unnecessary. It's an unnecessary change. And it is one of those that kind of takes away from part of the scariness of the encounter.
I don't know.
Well, next up we've got a mutiny. And probably Helios' cattle if that's what Thunderbringer is about. Which I just suspect that it is.